Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Blitz Sports Media. My name is Ryan Lickett. I'm back with another 7-round mock draft for you guys today, tackling the Carolina Panthers. Now, we know the Carolina Panthers have been stuck in misery for quite some time this last decade, but Bryce Young showed some signs of growth towards the end of last season, which, give a lot of Panthers hope for the 2025 season. Now, what that comes with is Bryce Young as an expectation to live up to heading into next year. Young has to prove that his strides towards the end of the season were legit, and that is the quarterback they're going to see going forward. If he progresses and performs like he did for 16 to 18 games of his NFL career, it's going to be ugly for Carolina. They're going to be looking for another quarterback. Now, this roster is by no means perfect. It was not perfect last year, but they made some good additions. Tershawn Wharton, Trayvon Mooring on the defensive side of the ball. They have some pieces there in Brown and Horn who are already pretty good playmakers, but they need a lot more. They need more cornerbacks. They need some edge rushers. They need some linebackers as well, potentially even another safety to go along and add to that Carolina defense to make it a legit defense that actually can stop some offenses here and there. Offensively, a little bit different story. They have a solid offensive line. Receivers, they have a veteran Adam Thielen along with young guys like Xavier Legette, Jalen Coker, who can play a little bit. At running back, you got Chuba Hubbard, Rico Dowdle. Pretty good duo right there. I'll say that right now. And then at the tight end position, not necessarily ideal. Javian Sanders, Tommy Tremble, not necessarily guys that are striking a lot of fear in a defense's eyes, but offensively, it's closer than the defensive side of the ball. That doesn't mean they aren't going to establish the offense. I think in the first round, they could establish an offensive piece right away. Let's hop right into right now and see how Carolina can get this thing rolling and potentially compete in 2025. All right, let's hop right into this mock draft here for the Carolina Panthers. Obviously, at number 8, we're looking for one player available here, and that's Tet McMillan. I think he makes the most sense for this team right now. Obviously, you have a veteran like Adam Thielen, some young pieces like Xavier Legette, had a nice year for them as well. Jalen Coker surprised a lot of people, but I think Tet is the pick for sure. I think Barron here does make sense. He was a great corner last year for Texas, but I just really think that wide receiver makes too much sense for this team to pass up on a talent like Tet McMillan at receiver, especially when they're trying to figure out if Bryce Young is that franchise quarterback for them. A guy that could be sneaky here. I think Barron's probably the second choice, but Mike Green here, really good edge rusher. I do think that is a big need for this team as well. But I think Tet McMillan's the pick. He brings size, speed, whatever you need at the wide receiver position, giving Bryce Young a true number 1 target for them. Heading into the second pick, things get a little bit murkier here now. The Carolina Panthers have a ton of needs on the defensive side of the ball. I talked about how their offensive line is pretty solid the way it currently is built. Obviously, at running back, you have 2 good pieces in Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle, and we already established that wide receiver position. A tight end is definitely in play here. I don't think the tight end is necessarily worth reaching on here in the second round. Arroyo is not that type of a prospect for me. Safety, they established that with Mooring this offseason, but I do see them adding another one as well. Kevin Winston Jr. definitely not piquing my interest too much. I think linebacker is in play here. Demetrius Knight Jr., pretty good player, but I think this draft has a little bit of depth at the linebacker position. And I think we're looking at edge rushers. I do like Odelejo here. He's definitely an interesting prospect. I don't know if he's a second round talent, but a guy that is a second round talent that I think will wind up in Carolina is Jared Ivey here. I think Ivey had a monster season last year in terms of grades for PFF, 16.8% pass rush win rate. He was a 90.6 overall grade for Ole Miss last year. Playing in the SEC, he had 8 sacks and 31 hurries. I mean, he's a really good player who lined up outside, over the tackle. He was all over the field, and I think he's a good edge rusher that, a lot of teams will be looking at here in that second round range. If they're able to get him there, that's a great gift for the Carolina Panthers. Now they come back up on the clock here early in the third round, and I think this is where things get a little bit interesting for this team. You got players available here like Mukabaku here, who had a really good year for Texas. Definitely an interesting prospect at safety. You got Mason Taylor at tight end, a guy that I really like as well. Alfred Collins here, very good run stuffing D tackle, but they had a Tershawn Wharton. The one prospect I'm looking at is Chris Paul Jr. He is the linebacker that this team needs. He can cover, he can stop the run. He is the true leader of this defense that this team needs. And getting a true cover linebacker in Carolina is something this defense could desperately need. I think getting him there is definitely good. And the problem is, at this point, we haven't addressed the secondary. And I think if Carolina goes this way in the draft, they're going to have to address it. You have RJ Mickens available. Let's lock him in right there. Really good safety heading over there, who, probably is a little bit underrated in this draft process. And then the next pick, Noel Williams here from Cal. I think 7 interceptions last year with 3 touchdowns scored. This guy's a playmaker. You look at his coverage grade, 78.2, 67.7 in man, 74.8 in zone. These are the type of players that Carolina needs in the secondary. And I think adding Mickens and Noel, that's just a good tandem right there, that they go out there and completely readjust their cornerback situation in Carolina. Heading into round 5 here, Carolina does have 2 picks in this round, which makes it very interesting. I think in terms of needs, I know I mentioned the offensive line as a potential strength of this team. Seth McLaughlin is a really good player that we just can't ignore. 3-year starter for Ohio State, has played a ton of football, only given up 1 sack in his career. I think mixing him in that interior offensive line of this Carolina team would just greatly benefit this team. Finding him in the 5th round is a true value. Now you have some interior defensive linemen here like Ty Robinson, Cameron Jackson. Definitely intriguing prospects, but I don't know if I'm going to go in that route. I think at this point, right, I do think they need another player on the edge or at cornerback. I do like Huzzy a little bit, solid player, had good production at Carolina, but I think Tyler Barron is the player for me. Really, really good season last year, 10 sacks, 10 hits, 28 quarterback hurries, has had good production all of his years in college, 18.7 pass rush win rate. I think finding this guy in the 5th round is an absolute gem. Could be an absolute steal for the Carolina Panthers right here. Heading into the 6th round, things get a little bit interesting as well. We have gone defense here mostly in the last few picks. I think taking a look at this point, I think this is where you go take a look at the tight end position. Jackson Hawes, a sneaky player coming from Georgia Tech who didn't necessarily have the production that a lot of guys had, but I truly think he might be a sneaky pick here and a potential steal. And he's very different than Jatavian Sanders, where Sanders is more that receiving type player versus Hawes being more that run blocking type player. It'd be a good mix to have both those guys there. Then I think in the last round you go out and get a cornerback like Nico Reed here, who's had good production at Oregon, playing against some of the bigger competition in the league. Throw in another cornerback in that corner room, and then you got a solid secondary. Let's take a look at all of our picks right here. Going through, we're going to have a bad grade like we always do for PFF. Tet McMillan is where we want to go in the 1st. Jared Ivey, the 2nd. Chris Paul. Some really good players down this list. This is the way for the Carolina Panthers. All right, folks, there it is. The Carolina Panthers 2025 draft plans. Tet McMillan in the 1st round. Getting some guys like the Ole Miss boys and Ivy and Chris Paul could be some good additions to that defensive side of things. Gives them 2 playmakers at the edge position and the linebacker position. And then you go get a tandem in the secondary with Mickens and Noel. It gives them a lot of playmakers on the defensive side of the ball that they desperately need there in Carolina. I think the Tet McMillan pick definitely picks up that offensive slack they could have at the receiver position, gives Bryce Young a true wide receiver 1 in Carolina, which is exciting for Panthers fans going forward. I truly think this Carolina team could be sneaky in 2025 if they wind up heading out with this draft haul in a weak NFC South division. What do you guys think? Will this Carolina draft get them into contention in 2025? And what picks did I miss? Let me know down in the comment section below. If you're interested in more Blitz Sports Media content, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. Check out some of the other videos we got on the channel. I will catch you guys next time.